After I had cut everything out, I had laid everything out into piles by its texture or by its color paper. We're going to start with the pile that is the main house and work our way through all of the pieces. We're going to fold on the score lines of the house pieces. So I'm starting with this tower and folding it in half. And then as we go through, we're going to fold on all the score lines. There should be 6 pieces that you're folding on first. I'm going to fold everything in the same way. So don't worry about if you're folding in the wrong direction because we can always fix that as we go along. I'm using my bone tool to give really sharp edges on those creases, and they may be a little hard to see where you're supposed to score due to the fact that there are textures on these papers, so you might have to hold it up to your face or even check back on the Cricut Design Space app so that you can see where the score lines are supposed to be. And do not worry if you don't have a bone tool. You can always just use your fingers to do your score lines, or you can use a popsicle stick to make them crisper, but they don't have to be perfect. Just do your best with your fingers to make lines. When going through this part, I realized that I had miscut something. So I forgot to place score lines onto this piece, and I ended up having to recut it. So I just placed that off to the side because I knew I was going to have to recut the piece. And I just continued folding the other pieces I need scored. There should be 6 total pieces for your main parts. So this is going to be for your house. They should all be folded in on score lines. And again, don't worry which way you're folding. We'll fix them as we go along. So I recut out my one side piece and now I'm folding on those score lines. This is why it's so important to be checking all the score lines on all of your pieces so that you don't make mistakes like this and have to recut. Once you have everything folded and scored, we can set all of these house pieces off to the side. We're going to start with building all of our main structures and then adding our porch and our roof. So I'm going ahead here and I am just going to organize all of my window pieces by size. This is going to be really helpful for when you're placing them onto your side pieces to make up the house. Before gluing anything down, I went ahead and I measured all of the pieces for the window panels against the windows to make sure they're the right size. Then I went back with my tweezers and with my glue and I glued all of the window frames around the windows. Don't worry if they don't line up completely perfectly. Mine were a little overstepped, but it's supposed to be a haunted house, so I think it gives it a little bit of character. I'm using a fine tip glue here to glue everything down to my house. You can also use double-sided tape, a glue stick, really whatever adhesive you prefer to work with. That makes it easier for you. I'm using a precision tip glue because I think that it's easy to work with on these panels. This house in total ends up very big, but the small detail pieces are small. So you have to make sure you're not overdoing it with the glue, getting it all over your house, and then smudging any ink you might have. I went ahead and glued down all of my panels on each piece of the house with the same glue, and I always double checked and laid everything out before securing them down completely. I highly suggest checking to make sure the size is correct before gluing it. My glue dries very quickly, so once it's on, there's no way for me to fix it. I would have to recut the whole piece. I went ahead and I did the second part of the house that had that same triangle top. It had the same windows and I placed those on. The only one that I want to show you a difference on is where the door goes. So the front door of the house is going to have 2 panels that we're going to put on. So on this tower, you're going to see that half circle and that's where our door is going to go. Don't worry about placing the actual doors on yet. We're just going to place the door frame on first. Now we can take our door frame and add in our doors. We're just going to glue these 2 little doors right on. Make sure that your 2 holes that are supposed to be the door knobs are facing in towards each other, like a door would be on a frame if you were to walk into a house. I lined mine up kind of centered almost to give a little bit of a lip at the bottom. And then I tried to line up the door knob right into the center. And remember, don't worry about everything being perfect on here. It is supposed to be a haunted house. So if things look a little uneven or wonky, it'll just add more character to your house. Now let's add on our windows. I kept my parchment paper on my sheet, and as you can see, all my windows are still on here. Nothing is ripped and nothing is lost. I thought this was great, but if you want to take them off and place them, just make sure you keep all of the pieces that you see here. For the windows, the best way to do it is to put your glue onto the actual house and then place your parchment on top. My parchment stayed on super secure this way, and it also has enough of a lip so you can really be liberal with that glue. You're going to want to place these windows where you see the cracks on all of mine. So I'm starting with my first part of my house where we have the tower on the left, or the point on the left, and the open hole on the right. And we want to have that strip of windows with the crack right in the center. If you happen to put the wrong window piece in, but it covers all of them, don't really worry about where the cracks go. We can always change things around. Where your little shadows go can also be placed in different places. At the end of the day, it is your haunted house, but feel free to follow my lead. But at the end of the day, you can always do whatever you want as long as all of the pieces fit in properly. So again, I'm just going to use my glue and I'm going to attach the piece of parchment over that glue. And I'm being pretty liberal with the amount that I'm using here. You can also use double-sided tape for your vellum pieces or for your parchment pieces, whatever is best for you and what you have on hand. But as I'm making them, I'm just placing them off to the side to dry a little bit. And then once we have all of our windows in, we'll start adding in all of our shadows that we are going to put in our haunted house. But again, you can also use hot glue, but when I use hot glue, I have found that the parchment paper doesn't really stick as well. It kind of comes undone and then it leaves a gap in between. So I feel like the parchment paper with the craft glue or double-sided tape is the best way to go. Do your best to not get glue all over the front of the parchment and the windows, because you probably will end up seeing some smudges and you don't want to have anything distracting you from the total haunted house. Also, when placing these down, you'll see that I'm using my full palm to really press them flat onto the house. Once you have all of your windows put in, we can grab all of our decor pieces, our shadows that are going to go into all of our windows, and start placing these. There is a written guide that comes with this haunted house file, and you can always follow where they're placing all of their shadows, which is what I did, but you don't have to follow that guide perfectly. You can also place them where you see fit. When placing all of these extra little shadows into your windows, there is a small part on the bottom that looks like a frame. That's where you're going to want to put all of your glue. So I didn't put any glue on the actual part. As you can see, it's just the bottom part. And then I place it just below the frame of the window so you can only see the shadow of these pieces. There are some pieces that are going to go in the windows, like the cat, the skeleton. Those are all in the window. And then the bat is going to go up top once we do our roof, as well as the spider webs are going to go on the outside of the house. For the first spider web, you're going to want to grab the smaller one, and we are going to place that in the top window of this part of the house. Technically, you can really put it on any of the windows that don't have a shadow peeking out if you would like, but this is the window that we are going to go with, and it's going to reach perfectly to the sides almost. So I'm putting the two smaller part of the web, so like the pieces that are a little bit shorter, towards the bottom, and then I'm going to glue down the rest of the web to the house. Now we're going to grab our porch pieces. I actually ended up folding this the wrong way. I folded it towards me and I should have folded it away from me. But like I mentioned before, don't worry about which way you fold it too much because you can always fix that. So it's not an unfixable thing. So I'm just going ahead and folding in on all of my score lines again. And as you know, I ended up folding it the opposite way. And it'll make sense why at the end, it's just the way that the holes are on the porch and where they're supposed to line up. If you mess this part up and you put the holes in the wrong place, your haunted house will still work and be fine. For the bottom part of the porch, you are going to want to fold away from the printed side. So this one's a little bit easier to know which way to fold because it has the print on it already. And again, if you can't see your score lines, don't forget that you can always look back at Cricut Design Space and see where they're supposed to be. So I'm going ahead here and I'm changing around my folds so that they're facing the other way. And as you can see, that bigger hole on the porch is supposed to be on the right side with the folds coming towards me. This is so when we put this in front of the door, it's a walk up to the door. So I'm going to place my spider web over in the left hand of the porch. It should be shorter, and this way we can glue all of the little pieces down to the porch. We're going to secure this with another piece of the porch, so don't worry about if you feel like it's not really secure with this little amount of glue, because we are going to put another piece on top of this to secure it down. You're going to find these two pieces of the porch, and the part that has the print on it a little bit, I'm going to put the glue on that part that has the print, turn it over, and secure down that spider web. This way it's not going to move and you have glue on both sides of the web. It also lines up perfectly, so you're not going to see any overlap when looking at your porch. Just make sure to not glue over the score line and the fold line so that your porch still folds really beautifully. Now I'm going to glue the floor part of the porch. So there's one strip that has a full length panel. As you can see, there's a cut side and a not cut side. You're going to glue down the non-cut side to the banister part of the porch. Make sure you're lining these up as beautifully as possible because this will make your project really nice and straight at the end. Once that's glued on, go ahead and turn your porch over. And now we're going to take those two split strips and we're going to glue them to the front of the porch. Now we can add on our magnetic strips. So I'm going to cut just a small magnetic strip. These don't have to be perfect. And there are score lines on the bottom of this porch that have little rectangles. It's a rectangle scored section. And that's where you're going to place your magnets. Now my magnets are adhesive backed, so I'm just going to pull off my little adhesive and then place it on to the part where the magnet is supposed to go. They don't have to be the right size, honestly. They could be a little bit bigger if you want to, but they're there so that when we assemble our final house, that they stick to the ground base piece. So I'm just going to attach these 3 magnets on. Again, mine are adhesive backed. If yours are not, just make sure that you are gluing them down in the right polarized side so that when we attach it to our bottom, they do stick together. Now it's time to add on our porch to our tower. So you're going to grab that very tall piece, that's our main tower piece, and we are going to attach our porch. This is why that bigger opening should be in the front, and we are going to slip in the middle strip into the hole and then glue down the 2 flaps in front. Then you're going to also glue down the flap in the back. So I'm sliding in that middle piece. And then I'm just going to glue down those 2 strips and then we'll turn it over and we'll glue down that flap so that this porch is super secure onto our big tower. Once your glue is dry, you can move on to the other side. Now the second side is going to be a little bit awkward just because of the way it's folded. So what I did was I actually, at first it wouldn't fold down correctly. So I popped it out and then I re-put it in. It is a little bit harder to work with, but I promise you that it does fit at the end. So just play around with it to get in the other tab and you're going to want to glue those down so that it is attached. Now you can see that this is supposed to be a corner and there is a small triangle that we are going to glue down. So I'm putting glue on the top of this triangle, and then I'm going to adhere it into the bottom of the side of the porch. So I'm just grabbing that triangle and adhering the two sides of the porch together so that they form a triangle piece. Now it's time to grab one of our roof pieces. You're going to want to grab this trapezoid with the fold. So there's one that looks like this that has a score line and one that doesn't. I'm just folding on the score line. I should have done this on camera, so I apologize. And now I'm going to put it on, there we go. And now I'm going to put it on to the left side of the roof. So the part that is towards me. That's going to be placed on with just glue. You can also use tape, of course, if that's what you're working with. But I'm putting glue all over that roof, and then I'm just going to place this on right on top. The score line is going to hang over the other side of the roof. Now I'm grabbing that other trapezoid piece and I'm just going to glue it down onto the roof right here. So I'm going to put enough glue onto the score line as well as onto the roof. And I even put it underneath the score line a little. And now I'm going to glue on the other panel. That way our roof is completely done on our porch.